Okay, so let's dive in. You've probably noticed it too, right? It feels like things are shifting a bit with younger generations,
Mm.
like childhood, adolescence.
Hmm.
It seems compressed sometimes.
Yeah, people definitely talk about that. Kids hitting milestones earlier.
Exactly. And one really fundamental milestone we wanted to dig into is puberty, especially, why it might be starting earlier, particularly for girls.
It's a really important question.
Yeah, so for this deep dive, we're tackling that head on. We're looking at insights from Dr. Andrew Huberman, drawing from excerpts of him discussing this.
Right, he's covered this area.
So our mission today is basically to unpack the factors. What could be driving this apparent trend based on what the experts are seeing?
Okay. Well, the established biology, is, especially for female puberty, really points to body fat as a key starting point.
Right.
As Dr. Huberman explains it, when a certain amount of body fat is reached, it releases a hormone called leptin.
Leptin. There.
And this leptin, it travels to the brain, the hypothalamus specifically, and that signal can basically tell the brain, okay, release gonadotropin-releasing hormone, or GnRH.
That's the trigger.
That's the big one. That GnRH is what kicks things off, signaling the ovaries to produce estrogen and, well, begin the whole process of sexual maturation.
Okay, so body fat, leptin brain signal, puberty starts. And I guess the immediate thought for, well, probably most people is the obesity crisis.
Exactly. That's the common connection people make.
You see rising childhood obesity rates, and it seems like, okay, more body fat, earlier signal, earlier puberty, straight line.
And that's definitely a logical assumption to make. I mean, the rise in obesity is real.
Hmm.
But Dr. Huberman adds a really important nuance here.
Yeah.
Yeah, he suggests that while obesity is, likely part of the picture, the link isn't maybe just about being obese or overweight.
Okay, interesting. So if it's not solely down to the obesity crisis, what else is in the mix? This is where it gets kind of fascinating.
It really does.
Yeah.
Because one possibility Huberman raises is actually improved nutrition.
Improved nutrition causing earlier puberty. How does that work?
Well, think about it this way. Better, more consistent access to nutrient-dense food could mean that young girls reach that necessary biological threshold of body fat earlier in their lives.
Ah, okay. So not necessarily becoming obese, but just reaching the minimum required fat level sooner because of better overall nourishment.
Precisely. It's enough to trigger that leptin signal and get the whole puberty process started earlier than, say, 100 years ago when nutrition might have been less consistent.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. It shifts the focus a bit, doesn't it? From just excess weight to how the quality and availability of food impact our developmental timing.
Exactly. It highlights how fundamental things like nourishment influence these deep biological clocks.
Okay, so if we zoom out now and look at the historical picture, the data on menarche, when girls first start menstruating, that really drives home how significant this shift has been, right?
Oh, absolutely. Connecting this idea to the long-term data is really illuminating. It shows a very clear historical trend towards earlier puberty in females, and it's pretty global.
Like, what kind of numbers are we talking about?
We'll take the United States, for example. Around 1900, 1903, the average age for menarche was about 14 years old.
14.
By 1990, that average had dropped to around 11 years old.
Wow, 3 years. That's huge in less than a century.
It is. It's almost like a whole generation's shift in timing, biologically speaking. It really underscores how much environmental factors can shape these processes.
And you said this wasn't just a U.S. thing?
Not at all. The figures from Norway are even more stark. Back in 1850, the average age there was 17.
17.
17 years old. But by 1970, it had fallen to 13. Huberman calls that a dramatic acceleration, and you can see why.
Yeah, no kidding. 4 years.
And we see similar patterns elsewhere, even if the data doesn't always go back quite as far. The UK, for instance, went from around 13.5 in 1940 to closer to 13 by 1970. Germany and Finland saw a drop from about 16.5 in 1870 down to 13.5 by 1940.
So it really is consistent, like Huberman says, regardless of location.
Pretty much. Which suggests, again, that while factors like obesity play a role, they might vary geographically, right?
Yeah.
So maybe they aren't the only explanation for such a widespread trend.
Right. It forces you to think, okay, if it's happening everywhere, and it's not just body fat levels driven by obesity, what else could be contributing globally?
Exactly. Huberman circles back to that point. Yes, body fat is involved, maybe influenced by obesity, maybe by better nutrition, allowing earlier maturation of those brain and body systems.
But it's complex.
Very. And he definitely cautions against, leaping to simple conclusions. These systems are intricate. Pinning such a big shift on one single thing is probably, well, an oversimplification.
Okay.
And this is where he brings in other potential influences like behavioral and psychosocial interactions. He notes they've seen some pretty striking effects in animal studies.
Behavioral and psychosocial.
Okay.
Now, this next part you mentioned, based on his discussion,
Mhm.
this was the bit that really made me go, huh. The idea that scent could play a role.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the more surprising factors discussed.
I mean, who connects smell with puberty timing?
Right. But there's actually evidence, mostly from animal studies, but with, as he puts it, some evidence from humans, suggesting that scent cues can influence puberty onset.
How?
Well, the observation is that if young prepubertal females are exposed to the scent of what's termed a reproductively competent male, crucially, one who is not their father and probably not biologically related,
Okay.
that exposure can actually trigger earlier puberty.
Wait, seriously? Just the smell of an unrelated adult male can speed things up. That's kind of wild.
It is pretty remarkable, and what makes it even more complex is the flip side.
Which is?
The presence of the scent of the biological father seems to act as a sort of buffer. It can potentially offset or slow down that acceleration caused by the unrelated male scent.
So the dad's familiar scent, somehow, protects against premature onset, in a way. That's fascinating. Does Huberman talk about, like, pheromones here? Is that what's going on?
He does touch on that distinction, the difference between odors we consciously smell and potential subconscious pheromonal signals. He notes that the whole area of human pheromones is still pretty debated in the scientific community.
Right, that's always controversial.
Yeah. So the main point isn't necessarily about invisible pheromones we can't detect. It's more the broader concept that odors, smells from both related individuals, like the father, and non-related individuals can somehow interact with the neural and hormonal systems that control puberty.
Okay, so it's not like he's saying, quick, change your living arrangements based on smell or anything drastic like that.
Oh, definitely not. No. It's more about highlighting these potentially subtle environmental influences that we might not even think about, showing how sensitive our biology can be, how these olfactory cues seem to tap into those pathways that can either push puberty forward or hold it back.
It just adds another layer, doesn't it, to this whole complex picture?
Exactly. Another piece of the puzzle.
Okay, so let's try and wrap our heads around this. We started with the clear biological link, body fat releasing leptin, signaling the brain. That's pretty established.
Yep.
Then we looked at the undeniable historical trend puberty, specifically menarche in girls, starting significantly earlier across the globe over the last century or so.
A very clear pattern in the data.
And we considered that it's not just about the rise in obesity, but potentially also about improved nutrition, allowing girls to hit that biological trigger point sooner.
Right. A crucial distinction.
And then the really intriguing, maybe unexpected part, the potential role of social interactions, maybe even down to olfactory cues, smells influencing these delicate hormonal systems.
Yeah, the scent factor is definitely food for thought.
But the big takeaway really is that it's complicated.
Extremely. It's vital to remember, like Huberman emphasizes, the exact causes are still being teased apart. There's unlikely to be one single, simple answer for why this trend is happening. We need to be wary of those easy explanations.
Absolutely. It really shows that intricate dance between our biology and, well, everything around us, our environment. Which kind of leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener. Thinking about all these different threads, body composition, what we eat, our social structures, maybe even the sense in our environment, what other subtle changes in modern life, things we might not even notice, could also be playing a part in shifting these fundamental biological timelines.
Yeah, what else might be influencing our development in ways we haven't fully grasped yet?
Exactly. It really makes you ponder the unseen connections between our world and how our bodies develop. Something to chew on.